They're lying every day. But finally, Republicans are fighting back. We're going to show you some examples of that. Speaker Mike Johnson and Glenn Youngkin, Donald Trump himself, of course, and even ABC News cut through the lies that Kamala Harris is peddling and showed us the truth. We're going to get to all of that. Speaking of lies, Kamala Harris caught in a plagiarism scandal. We'll give you those details and remind you of how plagiarism once actually killed a presidential campaign many years ago. And finally, Bill Clinton. Whose side is he on exactly? He's stumping for Trump, it appears. Or maybe it's really for Hillary. We'll explore that intriguing option too right now. I'm Larry O'Connor. You can call me Larry. We are loaded and we want to get right to it. So let's do that, shall we? CBS News lies. We know they lie. We caught them lying. Well, really, that incredible Twitter account Maze Moore caught them lying. He did the side, or she. Do we know yet if Maze is a he or she? Did a side-by-side comparison of the original 60 Minutes clip of an interview that they did with Kamala Harris showing a nonsensical word salad answer about Benjamin Netanyahu, then showed the highly edited, deceptively edited clip that ended up airing. Stephen Miller, who writes about the media over at Spectator, actually did a further breakdown on multiple edits that occurred during the 60 Minutes program, where CBS News did what they could to make Kamala Harris look more intelligent, less moronic, more coherent, aiding her performance on their show by deceptively editing it. And they've been called on to release the original transcripts and the original videos, and CBS News refuses to do it. We know that's going on, but what just occurred on Sunday with Speaker of the House Mike Johnson may be the final nail in the coffin of anything left of CBS News's journalistic integrity, if they have any. Take a look at this. Mike Johnson appeared on Face the Nation. That's Margaret Brennan, right? She's the woman who was the co-moderator of the J.D. Vance debate. You remember she tried to jump in and fact-check J.D. Vance, even though there weren't supposed to be any fact checks. And when J.D. Vance actually started telling the truth about illegal immigration under Kamala Harris, they cut off his microphone by pushing a button under the desk. Yeah, same woman. Well, she interviewed Mike Johnson, but Mike Johnson, Speaker of the House, Republican, he was prepared. On the left-hand side of your screen, you're going to see what CBS showed their viewers. On the right side of the screen is going to be a video that Mike Johnson set up in the studio that he recorded himself to show what his complete answers were. Take a look at this.
So that's a different accounting than this 2% you say was distributed.
Yeah, so they've obligated some funds, but they've only distributed 2%. The rescue and recovery effort's still going on, and then we address the rest of it.
So that's a different accounting than this 2% you say was distributed.
Yeah, so they've obligated some funds, but they've only distributed 2%. And when I was there on the ground, and you should go, I mean, bring the cameras and talk to the people there. They'll tell you, don't take politicians' words for this or the administration's word. Talk to the people there on the ground. They had not been provided the resources almost 2 weeks out from the storm that they desperately needed. And when I was there, 13 days post the storm hitting that state, people are still being rescued. They're stuck in the higher elevations in the mountains because the roads are down and all the rest. So they need every available resource and all hands on deck. The rescue and recovery effort still going on, and then we address the rest of it.
Wow. Now, that's really telling, not just that they edited so much out of the final show, the final presentation of Face the Nation, but what they edited. Mike Johnson was specifically talking about the real circumstances on the ground in North Carolina from Hurricane Helene, saying, I was just there. I talked to people. They said they haven't seen anyone. They haven't gotten any kind of federal response. Bring your cameras, show them, talk to them. CBS News didn't want their viewers to see or hear any of that. Gee, I wonder why. Now, understand this happens a lot in terms of politicians going and pre-recording interviews for these Sunday shows. Sometimes it's earlier in the morning. Sometimes it's the day before. And then they're sort of at the mercy of the network to edit out their own answers to the questions. Mike Johnson was smart. He was prepared. And he made these videos so that you can see the two side by side. Here's another example.
You know that it is against the law for non-citizens to vote in federal elections. That's established law.
Of course it is. Of course it is. But Of course it is, but here's the problem. There's a number of states that are not requiring proof of citizenship when illegals or non-citizens register to vote. We know that's happening.
But respectfully, Speaker,
everybody should want the law to be followed.
You
Glenn
know
Youngkin
that it
was
is
the governor of the
against the
Commonwealth of
law
Virginia.
for non-citizens to vote in federal elections. That's established law.
Of course it is. Of course it is. But here's the problem. There's a number of states that are not requiring proof of citizenship when illegals or non-citizens register to vote. We know that's happening. Look, Glenn Youngkin in Virginia, I was going to say, he issued an executive order to clean up their voting rules heading into the election. Less than 30 days out, a couple of days ago, the Biden administration, Department of Justice, Biden-Harris administration, sued the governor and the Commonwealth of Virginia to try to prevent them from cleaning up their voter rolls. See, that kind of thing creates a lot of doubt and concern in the minds of a lot of the American people. Why would they do that? Everybody should want the law to be followed.
Interesting. Again, what they choose to edit out. First, praise for Governor Glenn Youngkin of Virginia for following Virginia state law. There's a state law right now in the Commonwealth of Virginia that the voter rolls must be purged. They must be cleaned up of people who are dead, people who don't live in Virginia anymore, or people who are ineligible to vote, including non-citizens. By the way, that law goes back to 2006. Guess who was governor of Virginia and signed that bill into law? That would be current Senator Tim Kaine, the guy who was Hillary Clinton's running mate. Yeah, a Democrat. That's the law in Virginia. So Governor Youngkin and his Attorney General, Jason Miyares, they're following the law. And they found something like 70,000 non-citizens. And how do they know they're non-citizens? Because they literally, when registering to vote, said, I'm not a citizen. But somehow they were still able to register to vote. Now, CBS News wanted that information edited out. They didn't want their viewers to know that thousands of non-citizens were registered to vote in Virginia, and the governor there is now working to get them off the voter rolls. Why? Why would CBS News not want their viewers to get that information? What's the point of editing that out? Makes you wonder. We'll have to ask them. Here's one more example. There's a lot here, so pay attention.
Wait a minute. Wait just a minute. It's not me undermining it. It's the actions of the Biden-Harris administration in some of these states. Non-citizens are not allowed to vote under federal law.
So if your issue is with certain governors, shouldn't you be talking to them?
Wait a minute. Wait just a minute. It's not me undermining it. It's the actions of the Biden-Harris administration in some of these states. Non-citizens are not allowed to vote under federal law. But the states have prohibited. We passed the SAVE Act, in the House. The SAVE Act says you've got to have proof of citizenship before you register to vote. And Chuck Schumer and the Democrats blocked that in the Senate. We could have prevented this. The questions that people have about that, but the Democrats chose not to. They opened the border wide. A lot of people theorized that was so that they could have non-citizens to vote. These are realities, Margaret. I wish it weren't true, but that's the concern that people have. And in Wisconsin, for example, some of the counties are. It is law, but that's correct. But we have to make sure the law is followed. And that is the whole point. That has always been the whole point of the SAVE Act and all the measures that we've tried to ensure. I believe by my count, we have about 16 million illegal aliens in the country since Mayorkas and Harris and Biden opened the border wide. And because of that, there's concern because those people are distributed all around the country, as you know. There's concern some of those people will try to participate in the elections. Look, some of our House races, I believe the Republicans are going to win the House, grow the House majority, win the Senate and the White House. But in some of our House races, I have a colleague who was elected by 6 votes in 2020. Some of these are decided by hundreds or a few thousands of votes. So if you have non-citizens participating against the law and you have no mechanism in some states to stop it, that is the root of so much of the concern. And of course, in California, they have ballot harvesting, right? Ballot harvesting is notorious for opening the door for fraud. In Wisconsin, they're going to put, in some counties, unmanned ballot boxes in public parks again.
All right. So there's 2 aspects of this story. And my God, kudos to Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, for not only being prepared, setting this up the way he did, but then after seeing the way the show misrepresented him and edited him and hacked him and deceptively edited this interview, he decided to put it all out there. He released this morning on social media, and it's absolutely brilliant. He's also said that he will never sit for a recorded interview with CBS News. I think Republicans should go one step further. I think they should boycott the network completely until they apologize and make amends for this and show the full interview with Mike Johnson. Until they actually release the full interview from 60 Minutes, no Republican should show up on CBS News ever again. Forget about whether it's pre-taped or not. They have lost the public's trust. They should certainly have lost Republicans' trust. The fact that CBS News did this is part of the story, absolutely. But a major part of it is what they decided to edit out. Think about that last clip there. Think about how much they edited out. Speaker of the House Johnson was communicating to viewers, to the American public, that we had a bill that would have protected the elections from non-citizens voting. It was actually written into the law that made this not only criminal, but also budgeted investigative relief and increased the penalties against non-citizens registering to vote and actually exercising the vote. It was Chuck Schumer and the Democrats who killed that bill. And now you've got some states that are circumventing that even further. And then he went on to say, listen, in House races, I've got some people who win by 6 votes. If you've got non-citizens making that determination, not only are they breaking the law, but they're affecting the actual representation in this country for actual citizens. Why aren't Democrats more concerned about that? And why is CBS News in the business of purging those facts and that information from the public record to keep their viewers from actually being informed and knowing about it? CBS News should answer that question. Shouldn't they? I don't know what it is that they're engaged in over there, but it sure isn't news. See, this is the problem in journalism, and it's going to be kind of a through line and theme of most of what we're presenting to you today on this program, in that the people who get into journalism now, they're not interested in researching and investigating stories and then presenting news and information to you, the viewing public, listening public, or reading public if they're in print journalism. That's not why they're in the business anymore. No, they're not there to report on the news. They're there to affect the news. See, they get into journalism because they think they're going to make the country a better place, and they're going to use their job in journalism to make the country a better place. They want to actually affect the outcome. That's not what journalism was supposed to be. Journalism's supposed to be about informing people the truth and facts. But if you're in this industry because you want to make a difference and you want to affect the outcome or win an election or defeat a candidate, well, then you're going to approach the job in a very different way, aren't you? Now, you can call it a lot of things. I know what you can't call that. That's not the business of news. It's the business of activism. It's the business of propaganda. By the way, Speaker Johnson deserves a lot of kudos here. This is not his first rodeo, and he came prepared with CBS News because he's had to deal with them before. We're going to do a bit of a throwback right now to a really smart, witty, and may I say, devilishly handsome news analyst that first brought a story to you about how deftly Mike Johnson handles CBS News. Take a look at this clip. Wow, look at him. Okay, it's a bit of a throwback, different set, different hairstyle, but the style of the show was the same. Do you remember this? Now let's get to Speaker Mike Johnson, who appeared on Face the Nation on CBS this weekend. Talk about the border, but then, of course, all CBS News wanted to talk about was the anniversary of January 6th. Have I mentioned recently that that is a date that will live in infamy? But Mike Johnson did a pretty good job parrying the attacks, as he often does.
Back in 2021, you were the lawmaker who circulated the legal brief known as the Texas amicus brief, challenging the 2020 election outcome in a number of states.
By the way, you notice the use of the language here. You circulated an amicus brief known as the Texas. What do you mean circulated? He distributed. He helped write it as a lawmaker. And he distributed it and put it, circulated. It makes it sound like you're dealing with Nazi propaganda or you're passing things under the table surreptitiously on the dark web. It's like they choose these words very carefully, these journalists.
which by CBS editorial standards makes you an election denier.
That's
So-
nonsense.
Well, can I get you on the record on that?
I've always been consistent on the record. Did you read the brief? Did you get a chance to read what we filed with the Supreme Court?
Well, I have read extensively some criticisms of that, but
read,
This is why we love Speaker Mike Johnson over here.
All
Is that he?
Sorry, I get too excited and I didn't want to continue watching the whole clip, but you get the picture. He actually turned and said, "Did you read what I wrote?" I read a analysis of it. He said, "Oh, maybe before you criticize it, maybe you should have read the whole thing." My favorite part of that whole clip was that a real breaking story was discovered there by Ms. Brennan on Face the Nation. Remember when she said that this violates CBS News journalistic standards, or by CBS News journalistic standards, that makes you an election denier? The big takeaway there is that apparently CBS News still has journalistic standards. But of course, that was a year ago. Things have changed. They don't even pretend anymore. There's a lot at stake in this upcoming election, but regardless of who's sitting in the White House, the fuse on the economy has already been lit. 4 years of a conservative presidency is not going to be enough to turn the tide on our $35 trillion national debt. And if the left wins, well, it's like throwing gas on a dumpster fire. You don't have much control over the election's outcome, but you can diversify your savings right now by investing in gold from Birch Gold. For millennia, gold has stood firm in the face of greedy governments, economic upheavals, and global strife, and it can help protect you right now. Birch Gold will help you convert an IRA or 401k into an IRA in physical gold, and it doesn't cost you a penny out of pocket. In the past 4 years, the buying power of US dollar has declined. The price of gold has increased by 40%. Is that a coincidence? Text Larry to 989898. Get more information. You'll get a free info kit on gold, and you'll trust Birch Gold as I do to protect your savings. Text Larry to 989898 today. Well, good news. We've got another Republican who understands exactly what he's getting with the incorporated propaganda media. And he was prepared as he walked into Jake Tapper's lion den. He is Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin. Now, the subject at hand is the fact that Biden's Justice Department is suing his state because he's had the audacity to ensure that the voter registration rolls in Virginia don't include people who aren't supposed to vote. That includes non-citizens. He found 60, 70, 80,000 of them, actually. And apparently Jake Tapper is very concerned about that. Watch as Jake Tapper furrows his brow in a very serious and concerned way about this outrageous behavior in Virginia. And watch Glenn Youngkin chew him up and spit him out.
Foremost, this is a law that's been on our books since 2006.
Yep.
It was a law that was signed by then Democrat Governor Tim Kaine, and it requires our election process and governors to use DMV data when an individual self-identifies as a non-citizen, and there is a match with that person on the voter rolls, to then notify that person that they have 14 days to affirm that they're a citizen or not, and if they're not, then they are removed. This process has been in place since 2006. We've just had recent Democrat governors like Terry McAuliffe and Ralph Northam use this exact same process within the 90-day period because it is individualized. An individual starts the process by self-identifying as a non-citizen. And therefore, as governor, I have an obligation, no discretion, to then run the process to notify that person through our registrar that they have 14 days to clear it up. And if they don't clear it up, they're going to be removed from the voter rolls. The big question I have is, given the clarity of the constitutionality of what I just described, both at the federal level and the state level, and laws at the federal level and the state level that not only require me to do this, but are focused on the fact that these are individual steps that start with someone identifying as a non-citizen, why is it that anyone could argue that a process that removes non-citizens off of our voter rolls is anything else other than common sense and constitutional? And that's my frustration with this whole process, which is it started 25 days before a presidential election. They could have started it a long time ago. We would have sorted this out because I firmly believe they are wrong. But this seems far more political than otherwise, simply because of the fact this has been going on since 2006. According to law, and they chose 25 days before an election in Virginia in order to assert something which really is inconsistent with the process that we're doing.
God, I love plain-spoken, intelligent, knowledgeable, and confident Republicans who just tell it like it is. There's something so great to see right there. And you'd love how Jake Tapper's trying to jump in there, trying to interrupt, trying to challenge him, but Youngkin wasn't going to have it. Understand how he just described this so-called controversy. It was back in August when Governor Youngkin and Attorney General Jason Miyares decided to do this. And again, it's the law in Virginia. He doesn't have a choice. He has to do this. But the process couldn't be simpler. What starts and triggers this entire motion and put things into motion to get somebody taken off of the voter registration rolls? The first thing that happens is that the person who registered to vote checked a box on the electronic screen or on paper that says, I am not a U.S. citizen. Now, first of all, that should halt the entire registration process, right? For some stupid reason, at the Department of Motor Vehicles in Virginia, it goes ahead and brings you the next screen and says, oh, well, welcome to America, non-citizen. Would you like to register to vote now? And they do. And they register to vote. So the first issue that starts this entire process is the individual who self-identifies as a non-citizen. But before they're taken off the voter rolls, they're given notification in 14 days to clear this up. Are you a citizen? If so, let us know and we'll keep you on the voter rolls. All right. By the way, one other thing, because they're being sued by they did this in August, not until 25 days before the election did Biden's corrupt, politicized Merrick Garland controlled Justice Department decide to make a political issue out of this, claiming that Glenn Youngkin and Republicans are trying to disenfranchise people. And their argument, by the way, is, well, if they were non-citizens back when they were registered, they might be citizens now. They may have gone through the naturalization process, and you're going to take them off the voter rolls. They should have the right to vote. Okay, two things there. First of all, that person who's now a citizen, allegedly, who registered to vote when they weren't a citizen, that's a felony. They broke the law, okay? Number one. But number two, if you show up at the polling place and your name is not on the voter registration, they hand you a provisional ballot anyway. They get your information, they give you a provisional ballot, and then after the other ballots are counted, if it's needed, they'll go ahead and check and they'll verify that that ballot is in fact a valid one and it will be counted as well. So there really, literally is nothing to this. No one's going to be kept to vote. But that didn't stop the Biden administration from politicizing this because they want the headlines that mean old nasty Republicans are trying to rig the election and modify the vote. And this is in Virginia, by the way, a state that Democrats have won since 2008. Isn't it fascinating that they're really concerned about Virginia? I find that fascinating. So Youngkin lays it out there very clearly, but guess what? Jake Tapper's not satisfied. He knows there's a racist, xenophobic, rigged election scandal here somewhere.
Why not just honor that 90-day period?
Well, let me just first begin. It's anything but a purging program. It begins with someone identifying themselves as a non-citizen. And I guess I would posit back to you, do you think that non-citizens, when they've self-identified as a non-citizen, should stay on the voter roll and therefore be in a position to potentially vote in a presidential election?
I don't think any non-citizen should vote. How are they self-identifying?
Oh, hold on. Now that's a great moment, by the way. Again, I love good, smart Republicans who are confident enough to be able to handle the media, and Glenn Youngkin's that guy. Let me ask you, Jake, do you think a non-citizen should be on the voter roll? Do you think that should be the case? And I want to hear look at Jake, oh, yes, I'm very moderate and down the middle. I don't think any non-citizen should vote. But by the way, that's a very interesting answer. The question was not whether a non-citizen should vote. The question is, should a non-citizen be on the voter registration roll? Because let me explain a dirty little secret here. You'll hear Democrats say all the time, there really aren't widespread occurrences of non-citizens voting, which, by the way, I don't know how they know that. It really hasn't been investigated or researched. But what this is really about is getting a whole lot of names on the voter registrations that shouldn't be there and aren't going to show up to vote probably. And then somehow absentee ballots just sort of show up out of the thin blue air from them. And it's never cross-checked and they never verify it. And this isn't really about who's voting. It's about who's registered to vote and then whether there are ballots submitted on their behalf. See, dead people don't vote. But somehow we've had years and years and years of instances where ballots show up on behalf of those dead people. How does that happen? It's a hell of a coincidence, isn't it? Anyway, back to Jake Tapper getting to the bottom of this. He wants to know how exactly you know these people are non-citizens.
How does that happen?
They actually tick a box that says, I am a non-citizen, or they do not answer the question that they are a citizen. And therefore, they self-identify that they are not a citizen in the United States of America. And this is why this is so out of bounds in my mind from the Justice Department. They fully understand this. They understand the process starts with a person self-identifying as a non-citizen, and then there is a match with that person's name on the voter rolls, and they are given not just one, but up to 3 times in order to try to cure it. And this is why I find this to be a very, very unreal moment that is stunning, that they filed this suit 25 days before a presidential election, when in fact this has been going on in accordance with our Constitution, the federal Constitution, and state law since 2006.
That's right. So just to sum up here, first of all, we want to applaud Governor Glenn Youngkin, like other Republicans who have really stepped up, and we're featuring many of them in today's show. He goes in there, he tangles it up with the media, he calls them out and brings the facts, and he does it in a very straightforward, disciplined, and intelligent way, and communicates very well. He's a winner, just like J.D. Vance over the weekend with the New York Times podcast, as well as ABC News, just like Mike Johnson with CBS News, and some other examples we're going to show you. We spend a lot of time complaining about the media, and we spend a lot of time complaining about politicians. But when people who represent us and our perspective and our politics really step up and do a great job, they deserve some kudos. And Glenn Youngkin's one of them. You're going to see a lot of headlines about this story. Justice Department, it's a civil rights violation. They're suing the Commonwealth of Virginia for violating the civil rights of people who have the right to vote. And here we go. It's just like the Jim Crow days. They're purging the voter rolls. And it's none of that. It's none of that. It's the Biden, Harris, Garland Justice Department doing what they've done for the last 3.5 years, using the law as a political weapon to manipulate you and to manipulate the press to talk about these stories in the same way that I just laid out. This is a law that's been on the books since 2006, signed into law by Democrat Tim Kaine when he was governor. Virginia has no choice. They have to do this by statute. They have to get rid of people who don't deserve to be on the voter rolls. The people who have been removed from the voter rolls, first registered, while at the same time identifying themselves as non-citizens. This was done in August. It didn't take until now for the Justice Department to do something about it, which is, by the way, also a week after the ACLU filed a private civil rights suit against Virginia. Isn't that fascinating? How the ACLU does it, and then a week later, Merrick Garland's Justice Department follows suit and does the ACLU's bidding. One other thing that's really, really important, the way this statute works and the way the federal intervention works, Virginia now has a waiting period to be able to respond to the federal lawsuit. Their response won't be until after Election Day. The Justice Department knew that. The Justice Department knew that Virginia wasn't going to even be able to say anything back about this until after Election Day. And the Justice Department knows that this is a losing case, that Virginia is in the right. None of that matters. The Justice Department is using the law as a political weapon against Virginia, against Republicans, just as we've seen them do against Republicans for the last, well, many, many years. So Kamala Harris's campaign is lying. And you already know that. You've seen many of the lies that the campaign has put out. Of course, now they're getting very desperate. We've laid out for you yesterday how bad things are for them in the polls. If you missed that clip, please take a look at whatever video streaming site you're using right now. You'll see one of our clips from yesterday that shows how desperate they're about to become over the next 3 weeks because they're losing badly. But yesterday may be the most atrocious, despicable, and blatant lie from the Kamala Harris campaign yet. Take a look at the Kamala HQ X account. Now, this is a account that is directly controlled by the Kamala Harris presidential campaign, and it pushes out videos and various narratives to, well, go viral and gain some kind of momentum on social media, either on behalf of Kamala Harris's cause or to attack Donald Trump. And here's what they posted, a small clip about a minute and 20 seconds long from last night's town hall with Donald Trump. And you'll see how it's described here. Trump appears lost, confused, and frozen on stage as multiple songs play for 30 plus minutes and the crowd pours out of the venue early. Well, now that sounds really bad. And this is, by the way, timed coincidentally or not so coincidentally, as Kamala Harris and all of her, propaganda partners in the corporate legacy media have been calling on Donald Trump to release his medical records, which is pretty hilarious considering these are the same people, Kamala Harris and the partners in the propaganda corporate legacy media, who spent the last 3.5 years not only covering up Joe Biden's obvious mental and physical decline, but also if anyone raised any questions about Joe Biden's obvious mental and physical decline, they called you a propagandist and master of disinformation. But now they're demanding that Donald Trump release his health records, and they're planting seeds like this, that there's some serious mental or health problem with Donald Trump. So that's what they said. Appears lost, confused, frozen on stage as multiple songs play for over 30 minutes and the crowd pours out of the venue. Now think about that for a minute. Does that sound right? That he just stood on the stage in silence while music played for 30 plus minutes? You've seen Trump rallies. Does that sound normal? Now take a look at what it actually looked like.
And then greet a few people, or do you want to? Well, you had said you wanted to.
Voice. She used to be married to Angela Weber, by the way. She was the original Christine in Phantom of the Opera. I worked with, all right, I don't want to digress. Anyway, as much as I love hearing her sing, first of all, what you just saw was an edit that whole, do you want to play your song? And he said, which song is that? That's supposed to make him look confused, like he doesn't know what's going on. And then they cut to him standing there as the song is playing. That's not how it went down, actually. And you can see all these people standing up and they're looking, and he's just standing there and he's sort of, what's happening? Here's people leaving the venue. It seems weird, right? Really weird, really, really weird. So what's really going on there? I mean, we'll tell you in a second. But first, again, I want to show you that not only did the Kamala HQ account tweet that out, but here's Kamala Harris on her own personal X account, retweeting that saying, hope he's okay, which of course is kind of a bitchy, catty, sort of snarky, mean girl sort of thing to do, which I guess we shouldn't expect anything else from Kamala Harris. If he's really having some kind of 30-minute long dazed and confused senior moment, do you really think Kamala Harris's reply would be, hope he's okay, considering she had to deal with this with Joe Biden? I doubt it would be. NBC News this morning on the Today Show, they highlighted this, and here's how they reported it to their viewers. Play close attention, because over on ABC at Good Morning America, they covered the story very differently. First, we're going to look at the Today Show, who picks up on Kamala Harris's lies and repeats them. Repeats the Kamala Harris lies with the Today Show logo and NBC News's stamp of approval.
President Harris is raising concerns about her opponent's fitness for office, and Trump is launching personal attacks on her intelligence and cognitive ability. NBC's senior Washington correspondent Hallie Jackson with a closer look at that aspect of the race. Hallie, good morning.
Hey, Savannah, good morning to you. It is all front and center this morning, given that Trump rally overnight, with Vice President Harris in response to it tweeting simply, is he okay? Part of a bigger spotlight she's putting on the former president's health. Mr. Trump's team saying overall that he is, in their words, sharper and more focused than ever before.
Let's go nice and loud.
Former President Trump's extended soundtrack session overnight, cast by his campaign as indulging a crowd who wanted to hear more songs from the famous DJT Spotify playlist. But to the Harris campaign, Mr. Trump appeared lost, confused, and frozen.
All right. So you see exactly how NBC News and the Today Show presented what happened at the rally. As well as, basically just picking up and parroting and repeating exactly what the Kamala Harris campaign said. So what really happened? Why was he standing there for 30 minutes with the music playing? Why were people leaving the venue? What's going on here? I hate to say it, but ABC News told the truth. I mean, normally I'm sitting here and I'm telling you the truth. I'm relaying to you. But the fact that ABC News actually, broken clock syndrome, I guess, actually had a unicorn moment, a white rhinoceros moment. And they actually not only stumbled upon the truth, but actually broadcast the truth to their viewers, while over on the other channel, literally, NBC News continued to perpetuate Kamala Harris's lie. Well, I'm just going to take a back seat here and let ABC News tell you what happened.
And former President Trump's town hall event in Pennsylvania took an unusual turn after he was interrupted twice by medical emergencies in the room. Trump stopped taking questions and stood on stage for nearly 45 minutes listening to his soundtrack. The crowd slowly dispersed, but many stayed for what became an impromptu indoor concert. ABC News senior national correspondent Terry Moran joins me now for more from Pennsylvania. Hey, Terry.
Hey, Alex. So Donald Trump came here to the suburbs of Philadelphia, one of the critical battlegrounds in this battleground state, looking for votes. And it was scheduled to be this town hall event where he would be taking questions and listening to voters. And it turned into something else, as you say, when the candidate turned into a DJ. Donald Trump, in his 11th trip to must-win Pennsylvania, urged his supporters to turn out on Election Day.
We win Pennsylvania. We win the whole thing.
Yes.
In a town hall-style event in the western suburbs of Philadelphia, the former president stuck to his top issues, attacking Vice President Harris over inflation and immigration. He pledged to shut the southern border, end Russia's war in Ukraine, lower prices at the grocery store, and bring down interest rates to 2%, while providing few details on how he'd accomplish all that.
People don't think of grocery. It sounds like not such an important word when you talk about homes and everything else, right? But more people tell me about grocery bills, where the price of bacon, the price of lettuce, the price of tomatoes, they tell me. And we're going to do a lot of things.
But then, 30 minutes in, two attendees suffered medical emergencies.
A doctor, please. Doctor.
The incidents shifted the mood, prompting Trump to cut the questions short and instead play some of his favorite music.
How about this? We'll play YMCA and we'll go home.
Trump kept DJing, and most of his supporters stayed for another 30 minutes of his playlist. Well, in certain quarters of social media, people had a field day with that, and I guess on the screens it might have looked quite strange. Inside that hall, however, people were having a good time. What can I tell you? It did not seem out of the ordinary. It seemed almost intimate. And at the end, Trump did something he very rarely does. He came down off the stage and mingled with his supporters. He was signing autographs and shaking hands and the like. Today, he's doing an interview with Bloomberg in Chicago, and then he's heading to another battleground state, Georgia, for a rally tonight.
I'm honestly absolutely gobsmacked, flabbergasted, blown away that Terry Moran, of all people, and ABC News actually went into detailed, accurate truth about the actual story that went on there. And it is astounding, actually, compared to, once again, what NBC News did here. Let's just recap. He's doing his rally. Everything's fine. It's normal. He's doing an interview with South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem in Pennsylvania. He's hitting Kamala on the issues. About 30 minutes in, two different people have medical emergencies. They don't know how long it's going to take for them to take care of the people and to get them out of the room or whatever's involved. They might need medical attention right there in the room. So they start playing some music. And he's known for his soundtrack and his playlist. So they play music and they just sort of try to entertain the crowd. It turns out that they weren't going to be able to finish the event because of the nature of the medical emergencies. They finish with YMCA as they always do, and he dances. He comes down off the stage. He greets the people firsthand and has a really nice time with them. It ends up being kind of cool and intimate. Everybody was fine with it. People weren't awkward. People didn't leave. This is Donald Trump, by the way, thinking on his feet and accommodating the situation, which last I checked is a sign of someone who's mentally sort of plugged in and competent. I'd like to see Kamala Harris having to deal with something like this. And I want to remind you again how NBC News reported on this for their viewers.
Raising concerns about her opponent's fitness for office. And Trump is launching personal attacks on her intelligence and cognitive ability. NBC's senior Washington correspondent Hallie Jackson with a closer look at that aspect of the race. Hallie, good morning.
Hey, Savannah, good morning to you. It is all front and center this morning, given that Trump rally overnight, with Vice President Harris in response to it, tweeting simply, "Is he okay?" Part of a bigger spotlight she's putting on the former president's health. Mr. Trump's team saying overall that he is, in their words, sharper and more focused than ever before.
Let's go nice and loud.
Former President Trump's extended soundtrack session overnight, cast by his campaign as indulging a crowd who wanted to hear more songs from the famous DJT Spotify playlist. But to the Harris,
they lied. They lied on NBC News' Today Show, and they lied specifically to repeat the lies that the campaign put out. And if you're watching NBC News or Today Show today, you heard a lie, and you probably believe a lie. And that's the business they're in. While we're wrapping this up, though, again, as they challenge the mental acuity and behavior and fitness of Donald Trump, as we see him at rallies every single day and sitting for like 3-hour podcasts with people and answering any question that's thrown his way, it's obviously ridiculous. But in case anybody needed further evidence at one of the rallies, I think this was 2 days ago, maybe it was yesterday. It was in Nevada, so I think that's 2 days ago. This moment happened. And again, not only does it speak to Donald Trump and who he is and his spontaneity and his quick wit, but again, understand, they think that they're trying to claim that he has a mental incapacity or a physical incapacity right now, and they're sowing doubt in his ability to be president. Watch Trump. Watch Trump on the fly handling a situation at his rally.
I took in billions, hundreds of billions of dollars from China. It never happened before. And don't let that baby bother you, because it doesn't bother me. To me, it's that beautiful. Where is that baby? That's a good-looking baby. Don't worry about it, Mom. It doesn't bother me. You know what it means? Happy, youthful, beautiful baby, perfect baby. Thanks.
You know, if that were Biden, he'd probably snap, quiet that kid down, shut that kid up. Or even worse, he'd get excited about the baby and go over and stick his nose in the cradle, right? And I smell your baby, Bjorn. Kamala Harris, let's face it, Kamala Harris wouldn't know what to do. Oh, no, that's right. She's a loving auntie. I forgot. She ever changed a diaper? I mean, other than Joe's, of course. That was quite an image I put out there, wasn't it? Sorry. I'm sorry I left you with that. Maybe that should have been the last thing I said. I wonder if she was in charge of diaper duty when Jill was busy. Kamala Harris is not just a liar, she's also a cheater. She is being credibly accused of plagiarism by the great independent journalist Christopher Rufo. Take a look at this very thorough thread that he put out on the X platform. Kamala Harris plagiarized at least a dozen sections of her criminal justice book, Smart on Crime, according to a new investigation. The Current vice president even lifted material from Wikipedia. And we have the receipts. Let's go through them together, shall we? The investigation was conducted by Dr. Steven Weber, a famed Austrian plagiarism hunter who has taken down politicians in the German-speaking world. We independently confirmed multiple violations which are comparable in severity to the plagiarism found in former Harvard President Claudine Gay's doctoral thesis. Now, this is a running theme now going on with the President Harvard Gay of Harvard, but I think they also found plagiarism with the president of Columbia, or was it UPenn? There's a whole lot of plagiarism going on in the Ivy Leagues and in academia. Everyone's just sort of copy pasting. I know they found one in the University of Maryland president also was plagiarizing somebody apparently. And that's exactly what Dr. Steven Weber did. Here's the New York Times featuring who this guy is, terrorizing the German-speaking world, the plagiarism hunter. And here he explains the summary of findings here in Kamala Harris's book. Copied virtually an entire Wikipedia article into her book without providing any attribution to Wikipedia, fabricated a source reference inventing a non-existent page number, self-promotional content from Goodwill Industries was copied verbatim without citing the source. And in many other instances, even when a source was cited with a footnote, the text was directly copied and pasted without using quotation marks. Quotation marks would have been the most transparent and honest approach also in non-academic books. He also says the further signs of dishonesty may be evident when sources were copied, but specific details were altered, such as replacing a Subway store owner with a sandwich shop clerk or highlighting Southeast Asia in the context of the U.S. gang problem. Again, the book is called Smart on Crime. Anytime Kamala Harris writes a book with the title, with the word smart in the title, you know there's something up. Here's a good example right here. Begin with a passage in which Harris discusses high school graduation rates. Here she lifted verbatim language from an uncited AP NBC News report. This is the Kamala Harris book on the left. This is an Associated Press report. It truly is just a copy paste. In the AP report, it said nationally, 70% of U.S. students. Here she said overall, 70% of U.S. graduates from public and private schools, but then continues it. I mean, that's not even close to being legitimate. That is full-on plagiarism, and that's just the beginning. In another section of the book, Harris, without proper attribution, reproduced extensive sections from a John Jay College of Criminal Justice press release. Look at that. Look at that. The only difference, one word, additional. Strategy in 10 additional cities. Here it's strategy in 10 cities, which, by the way, makes this even worse. I've heard people who have plagiarized, but listen, I've been writing on the web as a blogger, as a writer and editor. I've worked on multiple websites, Breitbart, Washington Times, Washington Examiner, town hall sites, including Hot Air. And sometimes you come across accusations of plagiarism. No one's accused me of plagiarism, but sometimes I've known writers who have been accused of plagiarism. And sometimes it's, oh, Larry, what do I do? I copied something from a web page and as a source material, right? And then I was just going to use it as a source as I wrote something about that information in my article, and then I was going to cite it, but I forgot to. And instead of like deleting it or rewriting it and putting it in my own words, which is also problematic, I forgot and I accidentally left it in there. A friend of mine actually ran into this problem one time. And I've heard of people who will like copy something over from Wikipedia or something, and they use it just to sort of fill the space in their article. And then when they go back, they rewrite it in their own words or something like that. And again, I don't think that that's legit, but it's certainly not copy and paste plagiarism like this. The fact that they left it in but changed one word tells you that this was deliberate and premeditated. They knew exactly what they had done. They went in to add a word. They didn't rewrite this. They didn't accidentally leave it in. They deliberately changed one word to try to make it read better. It's obvious. It's blatant, right? More here in a section about a New York courtroom. Harris stole long passages directly from Wikipedia, long considered an unreliable source. Yeah, exactly. Imagine copying from Wikipedia. If you're at the military academies and you're found to have copied and pasted like from Wikipedia for one of your papers, you're kicked out, or at the very least, you're put on disciplinary action, on restriction. And if you do it again, you're kicked out. If you are applying for a job and there's an instance of this kind of thing in your past, or if you have to, write an essay or something as part of your job application program and you do that, you'd be terminated. That you wouldn't even be considered for the job. Look at that. Look at the copy and paste here. There's more instances, by the way. Harris also copied language from a Bureau of Justice. Oops. Hey, hold on there, Larry. Steady. Justice Assistance Report, which was linked in the Wikipedia entry. So first she copies and pastes the Wikipedia page. Then she follows one of the links and goes back and copies and pastes the Wikipedia source material for her book. And it goes on and on. As I said, they found a dozen instances. So Christopher Rufo lays all that out there for all the world to see. And then the New York Times wrote an article about it. And this is where Christopher Rufo steps in again. According to the New York Times, this is not plagiarism, presumably because Kamala Harris added the word additional. Yeah, right here, the New York Times says because that one word additional was added, it's not really plagiarism. Yeah, the New York Times actually ran interference. In fact, I was going to show you the headline of the New York Times. The headline from the New York Times isn't even Kamala Harris credibly accused of plagiarism. The headline was "Conservative Journalist Seizes on Kamala Harris's Book," because the story isn't Kamala Harris plagiarizing. The story is that a right-of-center journalist is seizing
Hey, Larry,
on her work. Yes, sir.
I got that link for you right now in your private chat.
Oh, thanks. I appreciate that. Yeah, I wanted to get that. Thank you, sir. Boy, it's like you're good at your job, isn't it? Here we go. Yeah, look at that headline. Conservative activist seizes on passages from Harris' book. And then in the article, it says there's more than 5 passages. There's over a dozen. 5 passages that Mr. Rufo cited appeared to have been taken partly from other published work without quotation marks. Some academics, however, have characterized the campaign as racist. Yeah, because if you point out Kamala Harris's plagiarism, you're racist. The New York Times article also cites a plagiarism expert who said, yeah, this really isn't that serious. Well, everybody found this guy, this plagiarism expert on the X platform on Twitter. And they started asking him questions. He replied late in the day and he said, listen, it's a holiday. It was Columbus Day yesterday. It's a holiday, so I haven't really been focusing. For everybody asking about the New York Times article, let me just make it clear. I didn't read the book. I didn't read Kamala Harris's book. I didn't analyze the whole thing. I was reacting to 5 excerpts that the New York Times sent to me, and they asked my opinion. So in other words, the New York Times had this article. They wanted a plagiarism expert to comment on it. So they snipped out 5 examples of Kamala Harris's plagiarism, sent them to this guy and say, what do you think? Is this serious? And he said, well, it doesn't look serious to me. And that was it. That's how the New York Times does their job. And by does their job, I mean protects Kamala Harris. J.D. Vance yesterday on the fly responding to these accusations.
I saw today actually a story that Kamala Harris apparently copied some significant chunks of her book from Wikipedia. So if you want a president with their own ideas, vote for Donald Trump. If you want a president who copies her own ideas from Wikipedia, vote for Kamala Harris.
You know, there was a time when a presidential candidate being credibly accused of plagiarism would be done, finished, like would be forced to drop out because it was, well, such a horrible thing to be accused of, such a horrible thing to be guilty of, because it tells what a fake and a fraud and a phony you are. There was a time when this would nearly end a political career. And I'm just not saying that rhetorically. There literally was a time. That time was called 1988. And the candidate was Joe Biden. He was running in the Democrat nominee process, the primaries for the nomination for president to run against eventually George Herbert Walker Bush. And Joe Biden, well, take a look at how the media, CBS News, ironically, covered the story then.
Democratic presidential candidate Joseph Biden today faces a controversy that his opponents could use in raising questions about his character. 3 weeks ago, at a debate at the Iowa State Fair, he used phrases identical to those delivered by British Labour Party leader Neil Kinnock.
Biden seemed to be claiming Kinnock's vision and life as his own.
Why is it that my wife, who's sitting out there in the audience, is the first in her family to ever go to college?
Why is Gladys the first woman in her family, in 1,000 generations, to be able to get to university?
My ancestors who worked in the coal mines in northeast Pennsylvania don't come up after 12 hours and play football for 4 hours.
Those people who could work 8 hours underground, and then come up and play football.
It's because they didn't have a platform upon which to stand.
There was no platform upon which they could stand.
The notion that every thought or notion or idea you'd have to go back and find and attribute to someone, I think is, quite frankly, ludicrous.
The problem here is that Senator Biden told his audience he'd just been thinking about these things, and he failed to give any credit at all to his famous British speechwriter.
You know, I was thinking on the way over here. Now, that's a little too much because, as you point out, what's behind the words? What's there? And a lot of people, the rap on Biden has always been that it's just a surface.
I should have said, to paraphrase Neil Kinnock, it's the only time I didn't, and all the times I've ever used it.
But CBS News found a tape of a second instance.
It showed up in Iowa, site of the first 1988 caucuses, then reappeared in the New York Times with a new charge, that Biden had appropriated a famous litany from the late Robert Kennedy about what the gross national product cannot measure.
It cannot measure the health of our children,
The health of our children,
the quality of our education,
the quality of their education,
the joy of their play,
or the joy of their play.
Biden gave Kennedy no credit. He has also quoted or paraphrased John Kennedy, Hubert Humphrey, and British Labour Party leader Neil Kinnock, all without credit.
Joseph Biden admitted today that he committed plagiarism when he was in law school. He said it was a mistake, but that it was unintentional.
Now, this report actually, which is another great shot into journalism past of 1988, goes on for another 3 minutes. This is a 5.5-minute segment on the evening news about this. You don't see segments more than 90 seconds now on the evening news, and they're certainly not laid out like this, not when the subject matter is a Democrat, and certainly not that guy. But you just saw it. You know, he admitted to plagiarism in law school. He admitted to plagiarism, or was caught plagiarizing on the campaign trail, plagiarizing Robert Kennedy, John Kennedy. Neil Kinnock was the latest one, the Labour leader in England, and he was forced out of the race. He quit. He had to drop out because this scandal was so burdensome. And as you saw from the delightful Connie Chung in the opening segment of that CBS News report, this is an issue that calls into the question his character. What kind of person does this? It's his character that was the issue. So where's the report at CBS News or ABC or NBC or anywhere for that matter about this character question revolving around Kamala Harris? And why is the only way this is getting covered at the New York Times focusing on the conservative right-of-center journalist who discovered it? I mean, they may not like the fact that the person who discovered this and brought attention to it was a right-of-center journalist, but the fact of the matter is, it's not his fault that the New York Times doesn't do any investigative journalism of Democrats anymore. Bring in the big dog. That's what the Kamala Harris for President campaign said. They needed some help down in the southern states like Georgia, and so they wanted the big dog to go out there. Bubba, he had to go out there and talk to the voters and keep it real because he talks their language. And, you know, this whole Kamala Harris faking a southern accent, that only takes you so far. You need to bring a real redneck in there. Bring in the big dog. That would be Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton's the big dog. He's Bubba. He can talk to the... He's really the last credible Democrat who has had a good performance down in southern states. Barack Obama won North Carolina one time, and he won Florida. But Florida's not really the South. It's Florida. Anyway, Bill Clinton, the last Democrat to do well in southern states, he's been brought in as some sort of emergency relief pitcher on behalf of Kamala Harris. He's down there to try to speak those rednecks' language and really get them out to vote for Kamala Harris. So take it away, Bubba. Do your magic. Bring in all those votes for Kamala. Tell the truth down there, Bubba. Let's hear it.
You had a case in Georgia not very long ago, didn't you? They made an ad about a young woman who'd been killed by an immigrant. Yeah, well, if they'd all been properly vetted, that probably wouldn't have happened. But if they're all properly vetted, and that doesn't happen, and America is not having enough babies to keep our populations up. So we need immigrants that have been vetted to do work.
So I don't know if that really helps Kamala Harris. Let's break this down, shall we? First of all, I like to set aside, and I won't go too far down the path of pointing out the ghoulish irony of a Democrat like Bill Clinton, who has embraced the concept of murdering babies in the womb right up until the moment of birth. And in some cases, and in some states, Minnesota, even after they're accidentally born because they survived the attempt to kill them in the womb. I'm struck by the ghoulish irony of a politician like that speaking on behalf of another politician and a political party that's so enthusiastic about abortion, now decrying our birth rate in our country. That's pretty rich and deserves its own unpacking. But instead of dwelling on that ghoulish reality, let's start here again with Bill's commentary on the murder of Laken Riley.
You had a case in Georgia not very long ago, didn't you? They made an ad about it, about a young woman who'd been killed by an immigrant. Yeah, well, if they'd all been properly vetted, that probably wouldn't have happened.
I'm Donald Trump, and I approve this message. What the hell is he doing? He's supposed to be down there helping Kamala Harris. By the way, Kamala Harris is letting unvetted illegal immigrants pour across our border, and well, lo and behold, they're going to be murdering people. Wouldn't have happened. Are you serious? Now, we're told that Bill Clinton was trying to make a broader point, a bigger picture point here, which he eventually got around to it, claiming that because the bipartisan border security and immigration bill that had been negotiated in December didn't actually make it to a floor vote, and we're told that Donald Trump blocked it, which is actually a lie because he can't block anything. He's not a senator. That had that been passed, then we'd be vetting all of these murderers now. But of course, Laken Riley's a murderer crossed the border well before that bill would have been signed into law or been in effect in any way whatsoever. So it's a lie. But if this is the way you're trying to make that case, Bill, you're not helping. I promise you. They really should make this into an ad. This should be played over and over and over again because he's Bubba, man. He's the big dog. He's gonna do the trick in Georgia for Kamala Harris.
You had a case in Georgia not very long ago, didn't you? They made an ad about it, about a young woman who'd been killed by an immigrant. Yeah, well, if they'd all been properly vetted, that probably wouldn't have happened.
Hey, Bill, who's responsible for the vetting? Who's in charge of that vetting process? Why wasn't the murderer vetted? The answer to that question occur to you by any chance? That's amazing. That is absolutely amazing. I don't think he's helping. Actually, there's a little bit more of this because he appeared on another platform here, once again trying to focus on the low birth rate, saying that we need more immigration. And by the way, that's not something that Republicans disagree with. I mean, we'd love for American citizens to be having babies and not killing them before they're born, and we need to increase the size of our families and increase more babies being born here. Yes, 100%. But we also need well-vetted, well-regulated, legal immigration to fill in some of those gaps. Although first we've got to get a handle on the illegal immigration and deport the illegal immigrants who are in this country so that we can get back to some semblance of normal. But here's Joe Biden making the case for an open border, I suppose.
A new direction to manage an immigration crisis in a tough time where there's all this upheaval all over the world, where there are border problems all over the world, where millions of people are trying to escape the misery they're in. And other people are saying, well, I want to do what I can and take what I can, but maybe there's a limit to how much we can do. In other words, I don't think Americans are anti-immigration, they're anti-chaos, right? They don't want us to do more than we can, but they recognize, at least most people do, we got the lowest birth rate we've had in well over 100 years. We're not at replacement level, which means we got to have somebody come here if we want to keep growing the economy. unless one of you is one of these artificial intelligence geniuses who figured out how we can all grow with no work.
I love that those are the only two solutions he can come up with. You know, our birth rate is so low that we're not at replacement levels anymore. So we got to bring people from other countries in here, or we got to come up with some sort of artificial intelligence robotic solution. Hey, isn't there another way to increase the birth rate? Isn't there another way to get our birth rate up to replacement levels? I'm sure there's got to be something that might be simpler than, you know, inventing a robot or importing people from other countries. Hey, I've got an idea. How about we have babies? How about we get pregnant and we have babies ourselves? Oh, what fun is that? Well, we just had the one baby, Chelsea. In fact, I'm not so sure I'm the daddy anyway, because I was busy that night. You know, I had a lot of other friends down there that I was visiting late at night when Hillary was studying for her law degree. This is a guy who's only had one child himself, a guy who is wealthy and has had stature and position in a stable household. He's had one child, and now he's lecturing the rest of us about our low birth rates. And yes, again, in power and political power, he embraces the idea of women utilizing this process, actually, and men as well. There are some dastardly men who are way too enthusiastic about abortion because it's their get out of jail free card from their perspective, who are just fine with getting rid of babies. And so they embrace that idea, they embrace that concept, and then are just dumbfounded about what to do about our birth rate. But when Bill Clinton goes down stumping for Kamala Harris, saying that the American people are not anti-immigrant, they're anti-chaos, he's doing Donald Trump's work for him. How many people hearing that message in Georgia are going to say, yeah, I'm anti-chaos on the border, so we want 4 more years? No. They're all going to say, you're right, Bubba. Thanks. Thanks for giving me another reason to vote for Donald Trump. Is it possible? And again, I'm just floating it out there. But is it possible that this wasn't just some dumb gaffe, that this isn't an accident? Hear me out. There have already been reports this week. Axios is reporting that there's a lot of bad blood between the Biden White House staff and the Kamala campaign staff. That the people who are working for Joe Biden right now in the White House, they're a little bitter. They're a little angry about the way things went down. And did you see last week, there were a couple of instances when Kamala Harris was doing a rally in Michigan, when 2 minutes later, Joe Biden shows up in the press briefing, first time in his presidency. So all the cameras in the cable news stations shift their focus over to the White House instead of showing Kamala in Michigan. And then, of course, there was the Ron DeSantis hurricane debacle, where Kamala Harris tried to politicize the hurricane efforts, tried to politicize Ron DeSantis not picking up his phone. And on multiple occasions, Joe Biden threw Kamala under the bus, saying, DeSantis is doing a great job. He talks to me all the time. I gave him my private phone number. There's no complaints. When asked by Phil Wegman of Real Clear Politics, the White House correspondent for that great website, does Ron DeSantis need to pick up Kamala Harris's phone calls? Joe Biden said, all I know is that he picks up my calls and everything's fine. So one sees that as a potential manifestation of this bad blood between the Biden White House. As Axios reported, they're bitter that Joe Biden was pushed out, which is shocking to me because I thought Joe Biden voluntarily stepped down. Didn't you? That's what I was told. That's all a manifestation of this anger and bitterness between the Biden people and the Kamala people. By the way, it's not new. They haven't liked each other since day one. Go back and look at the original stories. You know, when Kamala Harris first became vice president, the vice president's residence, the Naval Observatory on Massachusetts Avenue, about 3 miles up the street from the White House, was being renovated. So she had to live right across the street from the White House. She was around all the time. And it was not welcome during the early days of the Biden White House. Go ahead and Google that. You'll see those stories. But even further, now let's extrapolate it to the Clintons. You know that his wife, you're familiar with her, right? Hillary Clinton, the woman who suffered the most devastating, embarrassing, and humiliating electoral loss in the history of the United States of America, if not the world. You remember her, right? She was going to be the glass ceiling shattering first female president. And let me tell you something about Hillary Clinton, as much as she is odious and horrible and we dislike her. She's not dumb, and she worked hard. She put in the years. She swallowed her pride. She stood by Bill Clinton through the most humiliating political scandal that any wife would have to endure. But she did all of that because she had her eye on the prize. She lost to Barack Obama, who had no business even challenging her for the nomination in 2008 because it was her turn, damn it. And Obama comes in and steals her nomination away, and they fight each other to the bitter end through the final primary, and Obama barely beats her. But then she has to swallow her pride and serve his administration as Secretary of State. But it's okay. She'll do that, and she'll be a good soldier because 8 years later, it'll be her turn. And so then it's finally her turn, and she's ready to be that first female president, and then Trump takes it away. You have to endure all that. You're Hillary Clinton, and now you're supposed to sit back and see this imbecile take all of your glory? This moron, this person who doesn't study, hasn't worked, hasn't done anything. She even kept her maiden name when she married a man. You know, she's not Doug Emhoff, or excuse me, she's not Kamala Emhoff, is she? She's Kamala Harris. Hillary Clinton, she was the dutiful candidate's wife, took Bill's name. She threw the Rodham in there later. But she's got to be bitter. You know she's bitter. You know she's resentful. So Bill says, hey, Hillary, they want me to go down to Georgia and stump for Kamala. What do you think I should do? Oh, Bill, I have an idea. Why don't you talk about how bad the border situation is and how nobody's being vetted and they're letting murderers in? Yeah, it would be a good idea. I think I will talk about that. Because people don't want chaos, do they? And Trump's chaotic. Yeah. Who's president again? I could be wrong. I'm speculating. Unlike Jake Tapper and Anderson Cooper and George Stephanopoulos, I let you know what I'm just sort of, thinking out loud. I'm not delivering this as if it's fact, but boy, it's sort of in character with the people in play here, isn't it? They know that she's going down the drain. They know that she's desperate. You know how desperate she is? You know how they know how desperate she is? Because they got a phone call from them saying, we need you to go to Georgia for us. They know she's desperate. And so, of course, they're undermining her. They don't want her to win. No. Hillary Clinton didn't even get to be the kingmaker or queenmaker here. She had to sit on the sidelines while all of this transpired. And say what you will about Hillary Clinton, but she never goes down quietly. So maybe Kamala Harris is going to have some tire tracks on her back when all is said and done. And if you do some forensics on it, those tire tracks are going to match Joe Biden and Bill Clinton's cars. That is it for today, you guys. What a fun show. I appreciate you watching. We're going to have 5 separate clips for y'all to share later in the day. If you liked any of them or all of them, please do share them across the board. And also like and subscribe our videos and subscribe to our accounts, because that helps us get the word out and helps our show grow. And we continue to grow as we are facing 3 weeks from today as Election Day. And we need to be bigger and better than ever to be able to get the word out and help change minds, one viewer at a time, one click at a time. That's how we're going to do it, and you're going to help us do it. Thanks so much for watching today. We'll be back next time. My name is Larry O'Connor. You can call me Larry.